I'm going to pass it over now to our presenter. Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today to share your knowledge and experience with us, and we look forward to the presentation.
Rio, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate NIMSI for putting these on. I think it's extremely informative and educational, and I hope that the attendees get something out of today's presentation. I did want to correct the title as I adjusted it this morning. So the title is going to be Unlocking the Future, Integrating Artificial Intelligence into EMS Education. My name is Chris Smetana. A lot of people know me as the founder of IA Med or Immediate Action Medicine. Former founder, I should say. I sold the company back in November of 2021. But currently, I'm still involved in medical education and founder and president of Mind the Front Line, which is a first responder mental health and wellness nonprofit looking to educate and support our community with mental health challenges. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about the introduction to AI and how we can leverage AI in medical education, especially in EMS education. So when you look at the definition of artificial intelligence and its relevance to EMS training, artificial intelligence refers to the ability of computer systems to perform tasks typically requiring kind of a human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, and problem solving, and more importantly, decision making. And when we provide that in the context of EMS training, EMS technologies are continuing to emerge, and it's just getting faster every year. And I really do think, educators need to start looking at how they can leverage AI in their own training programs, whether that be a EMS program, whether that be initial training, continuing education, and really leveraging and harnessing that power to improve not only the student experience, but also the quality of the delivery of the education as well. When we look at AI technologies, they do have the potential to transform our educational approaches by providing innovative solutions and really just to enhance and augment our learning experience, simulate realistic scenarios as we've seen with the implementation of AR and VR coming out in education. And it also provides what I like a little bit more is more of a personalized instruction for the individual students as it is adaptive, and you can really tailor the learning to your demographic, to the student's experience, their knowledge level. And it allows us to encompass kind of various techniques leveraging AI, including machine learning, what we call natural language processing, predictive analysis for like QA, QI, also for exams, for initial or continuing education to help us identify areas of growth with that individual. Really looking at harnessing AI in the future of training to help it become more adaptive to the training gaps or the educational challenges that our students or our employees might be going through. When we look at how we can leverage it, we think about the intelligent educational tools that it provides and the platforms that tailor the education based on the unique needs of the EMS learner. For example, if we have someone going through and we're using AI in QI or QA, we can identify challenges or educational gaps in that clinician, where then the system can understand where that clinician is, where those gaps in trainings might lie, and then maybe recommend education or courses and things like that of that nature to really, enhance that student. So instead of taking a kind of a shotgun approach that we've done for years, I think in EMS training and education, where, for example, like maybe an agency this month, it's pediatric, and the next month it's cardiology. We can really use adaptive learning techniques to really tailor based on QI, based on what we're seeing, and blend that into continuing education to really elevate the level of that specific clinician. Whereas, they may already have a significant amount of knowledge in pediatric training, but might be lacking in specific areas of that or in other areas. Leveraging AI can help identify what those training gaps are and, recommend courses and education to help build them up to provide more competent and more clinically confident, as I like to call it, educators and clinicians. So, this is not just a tool for our clinicians. It can be also leveraged for our educators, train the trainer courses and things of those likes as well. My apologies. So when we look at the importance of integrating AI to enhance some of the educational effectiveness and efficiency with our training programs, with continuing education and medical education across the board, the integration of AI technologies and into EMS education specifically, I feel like is a crucial for addressing the evolving demands of EMS and the EMS profession as we continue to grow into community paramedicine and critical care medicine. We're really seeing the evolution of EMS and what it's able to do, not only pre-hospitally, but also in other clinical settings as well. So being able to leverage AI and the training models can really be utilized to help augment training across the board to help not only EMS providers, but EMS as a whole continue to keep up with the forward progression and the advancements of medical technology and the supporting skills, tools that we might have pre-hospitally and also in the clinics to really elevate our level of standard, the standard of education, the standard of delivery of medical services across the board. It also, when we look at, it prepares students for the complexity of pre-hospital care. I think, at least in what I've been seeing in the last several years, especially like just the last 5 years, is really just the ramp up of pre-hospital care and being able to keep up with that from a student's perspective or a clinician's perspective that is currently practicing in the field. I feel like leveraging AI will help us stay at the forefront and continue to evolve our profession, being able to provide additional services and, a higher level of care, whether that be in person, on the scene, or in the clinics, or in the classroom, more importantly, for those educators. I feel like by harnessing the power of AI, we as educators can really optimize our curriculum development. It helps streamline the assessment process when we're evaluating students for, are they retaining the information? Can they apply the information and the knowledge to a patient or to a critical skill? These are all things that I feel like we can utilize as educators to harness and really streamline that development of not only the curriculum, but the delivery of the curriculum. And once again, being able to personalize those learning experiences that cater to a more and growing diverse learner needs and preferences, which enhances kind of the student experience. If a student is able to receive that knowledge in a way that is specific to them and it makes sense, it's adaptive and they're able to take that knowledge and then apply it. I feel like for so long we've kind of utilized kind of not only cookbook protocols, but cookbook learning, I'd like to call it, in the implementation of education for initial training. That could be EMT, that could be stop the bleed, TCC, FPC, however you want to look at it. We've kind of taken a kind of cookbook approach versus being able to really understand across the board, and how can we elevate that? And utilizing AI, harnessing that power that it does bring us, because it's only getting better as we continue to evolve. And I'll talk about a little bit about the research downstream. But when we also look at like AI-enabled educational interventions, they have the potential to improve the not only the effectiveness but the efficiency of EMS training, meaning that we can basically ramp up our students hopefully a little bit quicker because we're being more effective to identify through assessments and their knowledge to really understand, hey, where do we need to focus on this particular student instead of once again that shotgun approach where we're saying, hey, we need to go after everybody and keep everybody at the same level. Well, we know, and I think a lot of educators that might be listening might know, that at times we have some students are a little higher up and we have some students are a little further behind depending on that subject. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have every subject be tailored to that individual to help ramp them up to get them to that end goal, whatever that standard might be? When we look at providing adaptive learning pathways, enhancing the student engagement, and really facilitating real-time feedback and performance evaluation in the classroom with initial training, with ongoing training, definitely leveraging it in QA, QI to deliver education that is relevant to where where those educational gaps are with that clinician, I think is extremely important. And we can utilize this tool where, as before, we would use hours and hours of spreadsheet, take that shotgun approach, and some would benefit from that and others would be kind of left behind and some would be bored, right? Because if I'm already understanding this stuff and I kind of at mastery level with that subject, it could disengage that student from further learning, where we can make it more effective, where if they're already at that mastery level, we can apply other, gaps that they might have and bring up the clinician as a whole and really personalize and tailor that education. You're already kind of seeing that with adaptive learning and adaptive questioning and assessments through the NREMT model for the initial training on those exams. So, so research showing some of the benefits of AI adoption and improved learning, specifically, the outcomes of student engagement. I've kind of touched on that already. When you look at students, if they're more engaged and we're able to deliver the curriculum or the content in a way that they best receive it and they benefit from it, and not only make it adaptive. So if they're not getting something, we're bringing a different way to educate them, not just kind of repeating and regurgitating the same thing over and over and over again. Research studies have demonstrated the positive impact of AI adoption on learning outcomes and student engagements in various educational contexts, including healthcare education. You're seeing it become utilized more and more in healthcare, in EM training for physicians, and being able to harness, the AI-powered educational interventions have actually shown to enhance the knowledge acquisition. So being able to take in that knowledge, understand it, and being able to apply it, but also the retention. So they're able to retain the information better because it was delivered in a manner that makes sense to them. And it does show to enhance, not only that, but the transfer of that knowledge by offering a personalized learning experience tailored to that individual or that student, meaning that they can now apply this in the field setting to that patient demographic or that specific call, and really be able to see that, hey, we're able to take the information in, we're able to process it, and more importantly, we're able to apply it, which I think is extremely important. Those are kind of the three key pillars when we talk about, is a student able to learn and now apply these through benchmarks. I also feel like AI-driven assessment tools and methodologies have definitely proven effective for providing timely feedback. Where it would have taken hours for an educator to grade or go through papers or assignments, leveraging and augmenting AI can allow that to be done in sometimes seconds, if not minutes, and really leverage that time that you would have spent just going through, papers, grading, assigning, all this stuff, auditing. If we're able to get some of that time back, that's high value time, and so the educator is now then able to apply that time that they would have been doing hours of assessments and QA analysis and metrics and using spreadsheets, building spreadsheets. They can now use it to actually educate. And that's where, the rubber meets the road. That's where the power of AI really comes from when you harness it correctly. When we also look at it, it identifies areas for improvement in our students, whether they be active duty clinicians already working for an EMS agency or a fire department, or even in initial training programs like paramedic schools, EMT academies, things like that. We can really see the areas of improvement that we can then, once again, like I said, through what I like to call adaptive learning, really kind of focus in on where are the defects or the deficiencies in that student particularly, and provide education around that instead of trying to do this shotgun approach. And so having more of a blended learning environment and embracing that, I feel like is extremely important. We also look at, fostering self-regulated learning behaviors. It's a learning model. AI will continually learn, and it'll continually learn based on that student and that individual and the program as a whole. So utilizing the benefit, when you start with the foundation or the fundamentals, it only gets better as long as you're able to leverage it correctly. And it enhances the motivation and the engagement of the learning process by the student because they're actually learning and they feel confident and they feel clinically competent. I can tell you that, when I went through EMT school or advanced EMT and then paramedic, there was many times where I had that kind of imposter syndrome where I felt like, oh man, I really just don't know this. And you're kind of shooting by the hip. And that really does have a negative mental detriment to that student and their ability to want to continue to learn. It demotivates them to the point where sometimes they give up. And if we had a model that was adaptive and really could tailor that personalized learning experience, augmenting the instructor, we can actually bring their clinical confidence up to the point where they are motivated, they stay engaged, they're learning, they're retaining, and they're applying these educational concepts with EMS medicine. So let's try to understand a little bit more about what is the role of AI in EMS education, particularly. So we talked about the definition and the significance of artificial intelligence in EMS, but when we utilize some of the problem solving and the decision making that AI allows us to leverage, we're able to basically bring that into EMS education. And it does hold an immense potential to kind of revolutionize our teaching and learning experience within EMS training, continuing education, advanced training, for those advanced certification exams or community paramedicine. As medicine and especially EMS medicine continue to evolve, this tool allows us to not only keep pace with that, but ensure that we're raising the standard and the bar at the same time and keeping up with that. And that brings a lot more validation to our industry and what EMS providers bring to the pre-hospital realm and in the eyes of the general public and other allied healthcare providers. When we compare ourselves to nurses or in hospital, CNAs and things like that, EMS kind of, I feel like a lot of people might agree with this, but we kind of don't get the recognition as other allied healthcare providers because we're looked at as, and where EMS started is a hospital would send out a van to pick you up and bring you back in and they would treat you. And we've evolved to that to basically, we come to you, we provide care on spot, point of care, right there, wherever that patient might be. And we have a lot more tools now than we ever have in the history of EMS. But one of the things that we're lacking is how do we get providers to understand how to use those tools that similar providers, maybe in a clinical setting, might have that knowledge. And when you look at hospital systems, they have reps that come in, they have dedicated educational departments that spend hours and hours and hours developing curriculum to deliver to their providers, or they'll use a third-party software. But I do think when you look at the context of EMS education and AI, it definitely holds an immense potential to continue to revolutionize our teaching methodologies and our learning methods. And it is adaptive and it's data driven, right? So we can use data to help identify gaps, to understand how we can deliver this course better. How can we deliver this education or this information better and continually improve, but improve in a way that we've never experienced before? So I do think where you see the evolution of medical training over the years, it's kind of gotten better and faster and quicker. Harnessing AI, we can really, it's like trading out my Honda Civic for a Lamborghini. And we just need to embrace it. And some clinicians are embracing it that I've talked to, and there's others that kind of still question, how can I leverage this? What can I do with this? Is it safe? Is it ethical? And I'll address some of those problems here later on in the presentation. But AI technology definitely encompasses various techniques, algorithms, including machine learning, like I said, natural language processing, predictive analytics, computer vision. All of those techniques can be leveraged to enhance our educational effectiveness and efficiency with EMS training programs. So let's recognize the importance of integrating AI technologies in EMS education. Recognizing the rapid advancement of the technology, especially in healthcare. You're seeing AI augmented, point of care ultrasound. You're seeing AI augmented, ventilator management. You're seeing bits and pieces of these come in to once again augment, our technologies. Why can't we use it to augment our training and education as well? When we talk about the evolving demands of the EMS profession, specifically, I think integrating AI technologies almost becomes crucial again, like I said, to keep pace of what we're having and what we're seeing and just the modern change of EMS practice as a whole. Now, the expectations are changing up here, but where we're not so quick in reacting, so to speak, to those changes is at the education level, at the base level. And we really need to be a lot more adaptive and dynamic, I believe, in harnessing this education, harnessing this power of AI to really keep the pace. because otherwise what we see is we have some departments, some agencies that might be ahead, some others are behind. If we're all utilizing this technology, and maybe even in the future, a centralized EMS medical database, so to speak, training database, the more information that you plug in, the more data points that it has to go off of, it really can harness. It can look at by clinician, it can look by agency, by station, by region, by state, by part of the country. And we can start identifying trends. And really, when you start identifying trends, not only in the patient population as far as types of calls, illnesses, but also just clinical skill, and really identify, hey, what areas does this region or this state or this station or this clinician need to improve upon? So that way we're essentially at the whole time bringing up the level of EMS delivery in the United States across the board by incorporating AI-driven solutions in EMS education. I feel like educators can create a more innovative learning environment that fosters uh, not only critical thinking, but clinical reasoning and problem solving, which we all know, as educators, like that's one of the golden nuggets of being able to actually apply what we've taught. We're all passionate as educators, and we want our students to learn, be able to walk away with a lot of the information that we're giving because we're passionate. We love medical education. We love medicine. Um, but one of the greatest fulfillments I have as an educator is when I see that light bulb go off in that student and they're able to really connect the dots and understand the why behind some of these can be complex concepts. And if we're able to break those down and deliver the education and the training in a way that they're able to receive it, and we get those light bulbs going off even quicker, you're able to connect the dots, that just carries them through their whole career or through their whole training program, more importantly, to the point where, when they hit the end, they really hit the road, at least armed with a lot of the knowledge. And then we can use other technologies that incorporate AI like VR and AR to prepare them for what they might encounter on scene when they finally get on a truck or an ambulance or a box or work in an ER, wherever they decide to go in their EMS career. But it does help them prepare better to deliver that high quality patient care in a very dynamic and continually unpredictable pre-hospital setting. So let's talk a little bit about the research. So research findings on the benefit of AI adoption in EMS education specifically, it's hard because there's not a lot of research out there specifically for EMS education, but we can look across the board at healthcare education because there have been several studies on that. But research studies consistently have shown the benefits of AI adoption in not only EMS education, but healthcare education as a whole. They show that we include improved learning outcomes, enhanced student engagement. So they're more engaged, they're willing to show up, they're willing to open up their computers, do the assignments, because they're actually learning in a way that makes sense for them, which is really awesome. Once again, if I'm opening up something and I'm feeling like the information is so overwhelming, a lot of us sometimes will just kind of shut down. And this tool will allow them to, once again, adaptive learning, allow them to basically continue to learn and continue to grow in a way that they're able to receive the information. Because as much as I love to be and think that I might be a great educator, sometimes the way I teach, my teaching style may not come across to that student. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that as educators. I think it's really important to understand that each student has their own learning style. And what is that learning style? Well, you can actually use AI to identify what is the best learning style for them. Is it better to, do, see, teach, write down, incorporate a variety of those methods? Or is it, something that we need to adapt to? But when you have the student engaged, it increases that efficiency and knowledge acquisition and retention. So they're able to actually acquire that knowledge, retain that knowledge to be able to recall it in the future. And, we see that in the results on how they're able to apply it, at least through the skills labs and the simulations. When we look at AI powered educational interventions, we have found uh, found to offer basically personalized learning experience tailored to that student or that individual. And that leads to, once again, higher student satisfaction and their motivation and academic achievement overall. You see their grades come up, you see their scores come up. Using adaptive technology, I think sometime in the future, we're going to start seeing our students if it's done appropriately, they should be consistently scoring, above the mid 80s in competency exams and recall exams because they're able to, once again, get that information in a very effective manner, allowing them to apply it to the future. Moreover, when we look at AI-driven assessment tools and methodologies, they have definitely, proved their weight in gold almost, in being able to provide that timely feedback that really helps the educator or the instructor adjust to that student instead of waiting weeks or months to finally notice trends or problems. And the hours that it really does take a true educator that used to take a true educator, perhaps days to go through the data to try to understand and see the trends. We can now do this almost in real time, and that's pretty cool. It's really cool to be an educator in this day and age, harnessing technology. We can also look at, how does AI enhance the validity and the reliability of competency-based assessments and EMS training programs? Once again, it's able to pull data points almost in real time as fast as you're able to put them in. And so if you're able to automate some of your reporting with AI, it can basically spot out trends as soon as the assignment's, submitted or the skill sheet is, submitted, or more importantly, you can leverage, hopefully here in the future, you know, when they complete a run on their EPCR, it's able to go through that, pull the data points, compare that to protocols, compare that to national training standards based on that individual, and really kind of give you, almost in, within seconds, hey, here's like a summary of that call, the detriments, the points, the challenges, what was done well, what needs to be improved, and that used to take, I used to do QA, and I loved it other than when I got super overwhelmed and had to do 40 charts. And it's hard to keep up. We're human, so we get fatigued, and that's on top of all the other life stressors that we have, the other hats we wear at our agencies. So really being able to be consistent and identifying these trends early on can really improve your competency-based assessments and your QI programs, and really just deliver a higher level of service within your agency. So how can we enhance the curriculum development utilizing AI? So, AI algorithms are constantly just analyzing data. That's kind of why I brought up, if we had perhaps a centralized AI database to help with curriculum development or QA/QI, it really, and agencies bought onto that, everything that kind of puts into that system, it becomes a brain, and it becomes a learning, dynamic, and thinking brain. So it's able to get more data points from across broad spectrums and really help us navigate the future of EMS delivery and education as a whole. Its ability to analyze vast amount of data in mere seconds, milliseconds, oftentimes, depending on the server size. You can really leverage the learning preferences and educational resources, and they really just unlock a new way that we can deliver education and training as an educator. And that really shouldn't be fraught with, resistance or negativity. It really should be embraced, in my personal opinion. We are always trying to be at the forefront and the best educator, best instructor, best clinician that we can be. So why not leverage technology to help us do that and be able to deliver these, complex educational models and solutions and subjects to students that really sometimes just aren't able to kind of pick up some of those things unless it is adaptive and it starts breaking it down. Maybe they read at a fourth grade level instead of a seventh grade level. And so, adapting the wording and the information structure and how it delivers that, those are all things that AI can help with that individual learner. Leveraging the machine learning techniques that I talked about, it identifies patterns and trends and learning gaps with the data. And that allows you to gain so much insight to not only your training program, but to every one of your clinicians, almost down to a T, so to speak, because it just takes all that information and that data, and those algorithms go to town. And it's really, is really cool to kind of see some of those trends, because if I see something almost immediately, I can adapt to that, or the system can adapt to that through a dynamic educational model and delivery. It really allows people to, instead of waiting, sometime a month to get that, oh, okay, we got to call, so and so in and have a discussion about, hey, we've been noticing, on your cardiac patients, your 12 leads haven't really been accurate, things like that. We can, identify those much, much sooner. And through dynamic and educational delivery, really deliver an education program that is specifically tailored for that individual by recognizing those trends on the ECPCR, by recognizing trends on exams and assignments as they're going through online training. There really is no reason not to leverage AI to really benefit the student. So if you're an instructor or you're an educator that kind of is resilient or resistant to this change, I would really, have you ask yourself that question is, well, we don't do it for us. We do it for our students. That's who, or we do it for our clinicians. If I'm in an education role, my whole goal is to make that person a better, more confident clinician. Through data analysis, AI algorithms can inform curriculum. Developers, especially as we kind of this becomes new, as we put more information into it, it allows the developers to really start tailoring and seeing trends as well. So that helps out with AI assisted point of care ultrasound. That could be telemedicine. That could be scanning. I mean, there's so much that's coming in the future that I really do believe, by more data, by putting in more data points, more QA, more QI, just everything, assessments, we really can improve our outcome across the board and including the tools that we use for the job. We can identify back injuries. We can understand, does going code 3 really actually make a difference when it comes to safety or patient outcomes? A lot of this stuff we do through research, but being able to augment that research with AI and the data points, I really think we're going to see some changes. Now, whether people want to accept those changes, that's the human component that we just, unfortunately, it's a computer. What you put in, it analyzes and it gives you out an answer. It's up to you whether you take that answer as the standard or if you want to basically challenge that standard. So I do think we're going to start seeing some standards being challenged in the near future, especially as we input more data into AI and we get the results that we really want to understand, which that allows us to make effective data-driven changes, not just anecdotal, but really, hey, here are some hard data points, and we can look at those to really affect the future of EMS. So we can optimize the content delivery and tailor educational materials. When you use AI powered tools, they optimize the content delivery by dynamically adjusting the pace. So maybe the pace of the course, maybe we need to give them more education or go more in depth versus someone who might have mastered that. And this is kind of what you're already kind of seeing with like the NREMT exam. As you take the exam, it's a learning dynamic exam. It understands if you're checking the boxes on certain, sections to make sure and ensure that you have that at the baseline knowledge that NREMT has set. There's no reason why we can't bring that out and utilize that and harness that power in our own training and education programs or continuing education programs. These tools absolutely provide personalized recommendations, supplementary resources, adapted learning pathways to support learners. So, hey, if they're not getting it, maybe it pushes them off into a mix and match or a word search, or there's so many ways you can leverage LMS systems nowadays to deliver education other than just a PowerPoint or just talking or just an infographic. We can really harness the education, and through AI, it can identify where the student is and divert them into certain pathways and either add more or, hey, they've met, they understand, they can apply. Okay, let's move on. And so I do think you're going to see different levels of paces with education and training, especially in the initial training phases for EMTs and paramedics and advanced EMTs and EMRs all across the board. These tools provide more of a personalized recommendation. And they really help support those pathways to get the student to mastering the core concepts or the core skill of whatever we're trying to deliver or wherever that subject might be. When we also look additionally at the AI algorithms, they tailor education materials such as textbooks, videos, simulations, interactive modules, like I just said, to basically align with the diverse learning preferences and the cognitive styles and the cultural backgrounds of EMS students. So now we're looking at far beyond just some of those very rudimentary data points that we probably did early on in EMS or our EMS careers for some of us are for some of the older educators such as myself. We look at the adult learning model, we look at how to the best instruction, but oftentimes we do not bring culture, inclusivity, childhood background, educational levels, reading levels, and all of those actually need to be taken into context on how this individual person best learns and how we can best deliver education to meet that student where they are, so that way we can get them where they want to be a lot sooner. And I hope a lot of people see the value in that. I really do, because I do as an educator. If I know that someone reads at the fourth grade reading level because maybe they just have their GED or maybe they just struggled with dyslexia, if I understand some of their cultural background and how they best receive education or learning or communication, because communication is key, right? If I can't communicate effectively to that student, how are they supposed to receive that communication, process it, and be able to apply it and retain it? So looking at all these cognitive styles and bringing in cultural diversity while you're not really even thinking about it, it really does make your education more powerful. And once again, it's tailored to that student. We meet the student where they are. We don't sit there and try to get them to where we want them to be. And that's a phrase that has always stuck with me as an educator, because I took that point away from, I had a preceptor of mine one time when I was flying as a flight medic that told me, like, hey, adjust the vent to the patient, not the patient to the vent. Right. And that was kind of like a light bulb that went off in my head on, hey, I really need to adjust my education to the student, not the student to the education. So just some food for thought. So how can we showcase some of these AI powered tools and platforms? There are numerous AI powered tools and platforms available for curriculum design out there that either augment the curriculum, augment rewriting some of the curriculum. But they're really, I would say, not yet. I haven't seen a lot, and obviously I'm working to hopefully change and innovate some of these things in the dynamic delivery of the education. So there are companies out there that are always looking for EMS educators or healthcare educators in general to better understand and be able to adjust the algorithm so it can work more effectively. But we as educators need to get more involved and meet the technology where it's at. So reaching out to some of these LMS developers or these AI platforms would be advantageous, because they actually are looking for EMS educators. They're looking for mental health professionals. They're finding ways so that way they can improve the data points that are going in and their algorithms for processing some of the stuff, so we can continue to get and harness and generate the power from AI and see it go downstream. It's also important because being able to have that dynamic education point, we have to tell the system what to look at. It's a computer. Now it can look at trends and all that stuff, but we still have to identify some of those data points and control some of those. And those are always going to be adaptive. But as we continue to do those, I do think you're going to see it get smarter. It's going to be able to deliver my end goal of having a dynamic education platform that will actually tailor. You can have all this content, all this different methodology of how to instruct. And I think that's important, because now you can focus your time on really building really good content, really good curriculum, really good, word search, word match, AR, VR, all this other tools, video simulation. You can spend now more time doing that and bringing the level of that up, and then let the power of AI basically dictate based on the student and the learner preference and where they're at, based on data points, what to deliver to them that will be most effective to that individual learner. I still think there will be times for in-person instruction and things like that, and QA QI, but I do think you're seeing more and more the development of online slash offline, hybrid education, where we're delivering online training effectively, more effectively, and then we bring them together for more of the human component, like the skills or putting things together. We still need to have that, I believe, in my personal opinion, to have that connection. Because not only are we assessing training, they're also able to view and see what other individuals and how they work through their critical thinking or their critical delivery of skills or education. And so I do think there is always going to be a human component. Once again, this isn't looking to replace the EMS educator. This is looking to augment what we can do in our brains and what we're so passionate about, and really just give us power to take it to another level that ultimately benefits the student, the end user, the EMS clinician, everybody, and including you as an instructor. It gives you more time back to do the things that you love. Like I love building curriculum. I love doing scenarios. I love building training videos, things like that. But if I have to spend all this time doing spreadsheets, looking at trends, trying to put data in, it becomes very time consuming. It still needs to get done. It's just as important. So, it's like, well, do I put more of my time over here, more of my time over here? So if I had more time over here to generate better, higher level quality of content, well, that allows me to leverage the time that's what I call high weight education time, in the areas that will actually continue to move and develop the student and move the needle in EMS medicine and delivery and education. And let AI do some of the menial tasks. It does it more efficiently than we do. We think we're better at bagging, right? We always said that. I was one of those individuals. I was one of those clinicians. No, I can bag better than the vent can deliver. No, it took time to really get over my own ego and say, hey, I need to be using the vent. And when I finally swapped to that train of thought, it just makes things a little bit easier. So, take that for what it is, but ask yourself, is your ego hindering your advancement and your delivery of your EMS education? We also do get actionable insights, and one of the other good tools is, leveraging AI, and we do this already kind of through assessments and test scores and things like that after maybe a specific section. But really, we got to look at it a little bit deeper, and AI can tell us like, hey, did we build out a good model? Is this section good? Oh no, 90% of the people are not getting or retaining the information from this section. And so we're having to augment that. So maybe we can go back and look at, okay, well, maybe we need to revise and redevelop that section. And that's okay. Like if I knew there was a section in my education and training program that was not working for everybody, I would love to know that. And I would love to get that information so then I can make a dynamic and corrective change to make it better. So it does. So that's just another way that we can leverage, these platforms. When we talk about examples of successful implementation, we look at AI supported curriculum development. It has been observed across various educational settings. It's being used in institutions to do textbooks, including healthcare education. Like that's where I was able to pull a bulk of the research for this talk. And for instance, institutions have used AI powered adaptive learning platforms to create personalized learning experiences for students, especially the larger healthcare systems that have the money to do that, because it can be pricey. That price is going to continue to come down, but you don't have to wait for that price to come down. You can still use some cheaper platforms to help you develop your curriculum and help with the generation of data. When we look at the improved training outcomes, the learning outcomes, once again, the students are absolutely enjoying this new adaptive kind of education slash adaptive learning model, being able to basically have the education meet them where they're at and bring them up instead of us saying, hey, you need to be up here, figure it out. Research studies have also documented the positive impact of AI supported curriculum development on learner engagement, like I said. And then once again, we're seeing the academic achievement. So our pass rates are going up, our clinical success, our KSAs, our QAQI benchmarks, all of those are being met because we're able to adapt the learning and identify the gaps and really harness the power of this technology. And it really does overall, I think, is going to raise the effectiveness of EMS education as a whole. It's coming. You might as well be a part of the wave instead of just getting left out there in the ocean trying to dog paddle. So what are some of the ethical considerations? So that's something that always gets kind of brought up, like, is this ethical? Is this okay? There's been a lot of discussion about this from several EMS providers and educators that I've talked to recently. I asked, like, what are your thoughts on using AI in EMS education or to make your stuff better? And some were very polarized, actually. No, I don't think. I think it's cheating. It's a form of basically, you don't control the education. I heard some different kind of responses, and it gave me some insight for this talk because really, you can look at it in that way, And I feel like it's no disrespect to those educators that feel like that. I think that's that's a very um, uh, pointed question. I think it's valid. It's a very valid question at the same time. Um, but we need to look at it. If you're utilizing the education and you're utilizing the data, you're utilizing the platforms to generate better education, which then results in better students, better clinicians, better outcomes for patients. Um, I'd be hard pressed to say why would you not want to do that? I really don't feel like it's a form of cheating or plagiarism, as I've heard, or really just kind of getting away from you being an educator because there's still a human component to it for some of these things to develop. You have to have the in knowledge and the input to put in the data points in order for it to spit out what you're looking for. And then it's up to you to look at those and go, is that correct? Is the output correct? Because the output is not always correct. And we need to adapt that. And still, it takes a human component to augment that and basically audit it. And that's important, So you as an educator still need to understand. And so you still have control over this, the software and this platform and this mode of education delivery. But we look at the ethical considerations surrounding the use of AI in EMS education, and it encompasses almost everything I've looked at across the board, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in technology, whether it be um, in other industries as well. It kind of comes down to several key areas, and that includes data privacy, algorithm bias, which you will see. I think it'll continue to evolve and become less, but there's always going to be even an algorithm bias. Just like us humans have bias, there's algorithm bias. And accountability to really understand, like, what you're putting in and what you got out, is that actually correct? Is it in line? Does it make sense? Because at the end of the day, we just can't take the word of everything. I utilize my 12 lead assessment, on my monitor, my ProPack, my Philips, my LifePack 35 now. I utilize that to augment my clinical decision making and critical thinking. Is it always a STEMI? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. And it still takes that human component to recognize that. So that's the accountability portion, is understanding the output. When we talk about data privacy concerns, that really arises from the collection, the storage of, and the analysis of sensitive, not only student data for training, but you start thinking HIPAA. We're putting patient information in there. Is that secure? Is that going to go anywhere? Um, Personal information, academic records, performance metrics. Like it is a very smart system. It can really spit out a summary of a student and say, hey, this student is XYZ. This is how they learn. This is their trends, here are their habits. Like, you're already seeing that utilized in the marketing industry. I mean, they're using AI to drive their marketing, how they deliver you ads on social media, on billboards, based on where you go. They recognize your face when you walk into a store. It's already being done. It's just, is it ethical? And that's the question of the lie. I think that's where a lot of the discussion is to be around, is what is ethical and what is not ethical. When we talk about algorithm bias, that's just the potential for the AI algorithms to produce bias or discriminatory outcomes based on the factors such as race, gender, social economic status, leading to some inequities in educational opportunities. And so that's, once again, I think it will continue to work itself out as we continue to learn and harness the power and put the data in, and more importantly, utilizing that accountability to audit the output that it's putting to make smart adjustments to the algorithm itself. And then the last point, being accountability, issues rise from the delegation of the decision-making authority to AI systems. Like, who owns this? Who's in charge of this? Is it secure? Do they have a secure database? Who's able to access the information that is inputted in? All those things, all those are very valid questions, and I don't have good answers for you today. I can only say that it's a realm of evolving technology. I know the Department of Defense, the U.S. government are all looking at AI and ways to put in safe boundaries, I would say, uh, to make sure it's not being utilized in a malicious state. And we're already kind of seeing that, right? You have deep fakes and things like that. So These are all questions that it's raised. But when you have a new process or a new technology or something like that, you're going to have to go through some of the growing pains to get to the end output. So I don't think it should be pushing us away from it. We just need to understand it better. And more importantly, just like I'll share a quote at the end, but we need to be responsible with this technology as humankind, as members, as educators, as instructors, as clinicians, on how we're using this, because there are errors, there are biases, there are adverse outcomes from AI-driven educational interventions, but you are seeing AI utilized in cancer screenings and things like that because it actually is effective in diagnosing some cancers that otherwise might have been missed. So you are seeing the actual human, tangible human benefit of saving lives from utilizing AI. And so I don't think that should detract from it moving forward. So, what are some strategies? I'll go over the 8 tips I have on the next slide, but there's definitely some strategies that you can do to address some of these ethical challenges, whether it be in your program, your department, yourself. But it's essential to implement strategies to ensure the responsible AI implementation in the educational setting. Um, I would love to see NAMC kind of help spearhead that, and I'd be more than happy to work with NAMC and other industry professionals to build that ethical framework and guideline on utilizing and implementing AI in training and education and in QA/QI, because I do think there needs to be some boundaries there, and who best to kind of lead that than I think the National Association of EMS Educators. So, but that's just my thought, my opinion. When we talk about AI implementation in educational settings, we look at the framework, the guidelines to provide guidance on ethical decision making, risk assessment, accountability mechanisms. I do think we need, as an industry, as educators, need to come up with something. I have my own kind of loose kind of guidelines that I'll kind of go over and some things like that. But once again, there are studies out there about what might be ethical, what might be a guideline. You can go to the national. Oh, it'll be on the next slide. I can't remember and pull it off the top of my head, but I do feel like as an industry, as EMS educators or fire educators, across public safety, I do think we need to kind of collaboratively work and kind of put some guidelines or, put some lanes around this, put some bumpers, some guards, some healthy boundaries on how we can use it, how we're going to assess the output. That way we just don't have educators going out there and just putting in information and getting it spit out. And they're like, okay, I'm going to take this and run. That absolutely should not be the case. You should be very versed, first off, in what you are trying to teach or deliver. And you should be a master of that subject. And if you're not, you should seek an SME to help you out with that so you can really audit and validate the output that you're getting. But I do think there needs to be some sort of framework around that. What that is, that's where I put it up to more people that are smarter than I am. And then we use the power of community of educating and educators within EMS to help this define what that looks like. We need to look at strategies for addressing data-driven privacy concerns. Implementing robust data protection measures, I think, is really extremely important, especially if we're going to be pulling HIPAA information. There still is very loose guidelines around HIPAA and AI. The medical industry, the medical technology is getting better about that. So I do think it'll come along rather quickly. But I do think, just having that transparency, not only for us as educators, but for the general public, for our students, so they're all aware, where's my data going and who's seeing that? I think that is very important. That's a valid concern. And that's a concern that I have myself is, how do we control, where are the stop gaps for that? So ensuring transparency is going to be key. And then the accountability and the data handling practices and having guidelines, policies, and good thought around that. So that way everybody understands what happens after we input this information. Where does it go? Who's protecting it? Is it protected? And then to mitigate algorithm bias, I think educators can adopt a measure such as algorithmic transparency, fairness in testing, and bias mitigation techniques to really ensure that the AI systems produce a diverse but equitable outcome for clear lines of accountability and responsibility for AI. That allows us to basically ensure that transparency is happening, that accountability, and it continues to build trust in AI systems as a whole. So here are some tips for addressing ethical concerns in the implementation of artificial intelligence. I did grab this from a validated resource. I can't remember. It's my, let's see, I think it was NIOSH, but you can see on the slide where I got this resource from. But basically, here are some tips. They have 12 tips. These are kind of like the 8 tips I drew out of that I feel like pertain to EMS and EMS education. But tip one is always, ensuring transparency in the development and deployment of AI systems in medical education. I don't think it's something that we need to hide from. If you are already using AI, I think we need to be more transparent of like, hey, this was AI assisted education, or this was AI assisted development. And that's okay because it's becoming more and more acceptable, and it should be. There shouldn't be a stigma essentially around it. So I'd much rather someone be transparent and then, not transparent. Tip two, addressing the biases in AI algorithms. This helps to ensure the fair representation of the educational content for the diverse learning environments, and taking all those DI initiatives into thought. Tip three, validating the output generated by AI educational tools to ensure the accuracy and the credibility of the information. Once again, this is going to come down to the end user. You need to be a master of that subject or a master of that skill. Or, more importantly, I do think you need to have multiple eyes on that, because, we also have bias. So at least having a rule of three as you're developing your curriculum, that, hey, 3 other educators are looking at this to validate and verify that the output is correct. Because sometimes you will get skewed outputs. And if you're not aware of what that is, because it's not your strong subject, that can be a problem, and that creates downstream adverse effects. So once again, I think putting our ego aside as educators and instructors and really kind of reaching out to the community. Hey, so-and-so, could you look over this chapter for me, or this section, or this module, and just make sure I used AI assisted technology? I just want to make sure the output is correct. And that would be the moral and ethical thing to do, in my personal opinion. Tip four, prioritize privacy with robust measurements to protect the students and the patient data utilized in AI-driven education tools. Once again, I feel like healthcare technology is evolving to help with that. I think the government is going to put in some hard guidelines to help us with that and give us some guidance. But I do also think, like I said, we as educators need to take it upon ourselves to create some guidelines and policies and, a roadmap for other educators, especially new educators that are coming up, on how to leverage this technology the right way. And that way we can control, to a sense, the output that we're getting to our own industry, and set that expectation and really understand. And that kind of communicates to everybody else that, hey, EMS is adaptive. We are learning, we are progressive, we are innovative. And I think that is important to bring more validation to what we do as not only educators, but the EMS profession. 5, obtaining informed consent from students and stakeholders regarding the use of AI technology in educational processes. This is, once again, I think should be part of your employment agreement. If you're using, AI technology in continuing education or QA/QI, it should be part of your training program agreement, in there, that, they understand that we are utilizing and taking a lot of human data points that they may not realize fully. I also think there probably needs to be some sort of introduction to how the program utilizes AI with their education and learning, to make the students, once again, being transparent, but also to help them understand, because they also could bring benefit and provide feedback, and they are a stakeholder in this whole process. So I think it's important to include them. 6, fostering a collaboration between AI experts, EMS educators, and our students, to bring a diverse perspective and expertise to everything. It's bringing all the stakeholders together is not a bad idea. We need to figure out how to leverage this technology before it becomes a problem, because it absolutely can become a problem if we're not responsible. And so this is where I think the challenges and the onus is on us as a community of educators and instructors for EMS education to really kind of lead the way, and really kind of continue to prove that we are an evolving, while young profession, we are an evolving and growing profession that takes things like this seriously. And so I do think there needs to be some, whether it be through NAMC or through NAEMT, but there really does need to be some talk around it. And there might already be some talk, and I'm just not aware of it because I'm not in every field. So I just want to kind of just put that out there. If it's already happening, great. I would love to be a part of it. If not, I'm just glad that it's happening. Tip 7, providing student education on AI and its implications in medical education as a whole. Once again, I think just having just a general onboarding, 1 hour course, whether it's online or in person, just inform the student on how you are leveraging AI technology to make them a better student, a better clinician, a better provider, and improve patient outcomes, which, if you look at the system as a whole, this technology absolutely is going to not only save lives, but cause, when you look at community paramedicine, especially, it's going to prevent lives from being lost for, missing meds or just little things that we might miss due to human error, because we are human. And I do think it's important to leverage and augment our capabilities with technology. Last tip, tip 8, establishing some clear lines of accountability for the development and deployment and outcomes of the AI system in medical education. And that's obviously where I would call on NAMC and the NAEMT to look at this more seriously and really kind of get ahead of this sooner than later, because it's only exploding. And it'll get to a point where you're going to now try to reel back in a lot of the things that have already gone out. And as everybody knows, it's really hard to change culture, change practices after they've already occurred. So why not be progressive and innovative as an industry of EMS educators and really try to harness this power, be responsible with it, and continue to move forward. That's a great quote from Tim Cook. I gotta move my thing out of the way. What all of us have to do is to make sure that we are using AI in a way that is for the benefit of humanity, not to the detriment of humanity. And that was a quote by Tim Cook. My name's Chris Smetana, and I'm with Mind the Front Line and North American Rescue. If you have any questions, I'll open up the chat. I'm more than happy to stick around. I know I kind of went a little bit over, but we started a little bit late. If you want to get a hold of me, I have both of my emails there, president@mindthefrontline.org, or you can get a hold of me at csmetana@northofnarrescue.com. And I'll leave that up for just a minute and open up the chat.